you spent a lot of time on your presidential campaign, which was quite successful, all things considered, given how relatively unknown you were as a political actor and the complexities of the current political situation. And I'm very curious about the consequences of that. I mean, I did note that, there was a fair amount of, I'm wondering what your relationship is with the powers that be on the Republican side at the moment. I mean, we've seen Trump make some remarkably interesting moves in the past few weeks. I mean, the fact that he's aligned himself with Tulsi Gabbard and RFK, and by all appearances, Elon Musk, who agreed yesterday to head something like a commission on governmental efficiency, which would be, I mean, the radicalness of this can hardly be overstated, right? I mean, RFK wants to, what? He wants to rekindle or reformulate the health and food distribution systems. Like, I mean, that's a major undertaking. And I think he's absolutely right about the health crisis that besets us. I mean, obesity and diabetes are a plague of such catastrophic proportions that they make any risk from climate change appear like absolutely trivial by comparison, insanely trivial. But it's radical. And while Elon Musk is a radical sort of character, and Tulsi Gabbard, again, she fits the same, she's subject to the same descriptive terminology. And it's also interesting that all three of those people are ex-Democrats, right?
That's what I think makes it most interesting. Which you could also
say about Trump.
Yeah.
It's not like Trump is the world's most obvious conservative, quite the contrary. So I'm curious about what you make of what's happening around Trump at the moment, and around Kamala Harris too, for that matter, because there's also evidence that her stance has become substantially less radical and more conservative. Now, you can be skeptical and cynical, and maybe you should be, about how much of that's just surface, but the Democrats did shut out the radical leftists at the convention to a large degree, and much of what Harris has been pushing is much more mainstream Democrat than what you might have expected, for example, if the people like AOC or Rashida Tlaib had got the upper hand, the real radicals in the Democratic Party. So what do you make of what's happening around Trump? How do you feel about it? What potential role are you playing and might you play in the future in relationship to that? And what do you have to say about what's happening with Kamala Harris and the reconfiguration of the Democrats?
Well, look, everything you just laid out, I think, accentuates an increasingly obvious truth, which is that the real divide in this country is not between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, as those words have become less meaningful. You have multiple former Democrats who you named: Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, and by the way, somebody who formerly identified as Democrat as well was Donald Trump. Now, now looking at the world in a very different way. On the other hand, you have Kamala Harris in her sprint. It's not even a gradual run; it's a sprint towards the center of traditional political content. I think what we're actually seeing is a different divide. It is a divide between the managerial class and the everyday citizen. So I'll start with Kamala for a second here. I don't think the right spot-on critique of Kamala is that she's a communist, right? The policies she's advocated for in the past certainly would vindicate that characterization. She favors taxes on unrealized capital gains, single-payer healthcare system. She has favored bans on fracking, bans on offshore drilling. She was a co-sponsor of the Green New Deal, so much so that she wanted to end the filibuster in the Senate. We go straight down the list of that history, and I've done that in other places. But as you say right now, sincerely or not, those are not the views that she's espousing at the moment, for the most part. So it's less that she is a communist or a socialist. I think that's almost giving her too much credit. I think that gives her the credit of being an ideologue, which I don't think she is. I don't think she's particularly ideological. I think she, like Biden, as Biden proved to be anyway, is really just another cog in a machine, right? I think that this is part of, and I think the more Republicans see ourselves running against a candidate, and to say that candidate, Joe Biden, when I ran for U.S. president, right, the pledge we had to sign to be on the debate stage was called the Beat Biden Pledge. And I told the then chairwoman of the Republican Party, I thought this was a silly idea because we're not running against Joe Biden. So why are we framing our entire Republican primary endeavor in the context of beating Joe Biden? In the very practical sense that I didn't think we were going to run against Joe Biden and we're not. But even in the deeper philosophical sense that why don't we focus on what other alternative vision we actually have to offer to the people? So I think that's a trap that Republicans would fall into. Now, again, with Kamala to say that, okay, here's everything that's wrong with Kamala Harris, when in fact that misses the point that she's just another cog in the system. We're not running against a candidate, we're running against a machine. And I think we have to understand that. So that is where I think you see a lot of the common threads between folks like, myself to RFK to Donald Trump to Tulsi. We have divergences between us to other more historically traditional Republican conservatives. There'll be shades of difference on individual policy questions on the merits of one form of regulation or policymaking or other. But what we do represent and share in common is a hostility to the managerial class, the managerial administration of America by, I would say, people who are never elected to their positions, the people who we elect to run the government, from Kamala Harris to Joe Biden or anybody else. They're not the ones actually running the government. It is a managerial machine of which they're just a part. That really is the divide. And I think that's what we're seeing in that changing landscape.
It's also strange. It's so strange that it's the conservative Republicans that have found themselves in opposition to the managerial class, because logically, it should be that the conservatives are the supporters of the managerial and administrative class.
I think there have been points in history where that's been true, no doubt about it. But I think that's where these words change their valence and meaning over time.
Right.
The managerial class. I don't use the term the elites really as much as some of my other friends on the right do, because I think that I'm an elite. Elon Musk is an elite, by certain definitions, founders. I think there's a different categorization I would offer between the everyday citizen, the creators, and then this managerial intermediary class, the bureaucrat class, the committee class. And I think there's always a balance of power between all three, and maybe some element of all three is always required in a well-functioning society. But right now, we live in a moment where that balance of power has shifted too heavily in favor of the managerial committee class, and not just in government, but in universities and companies, in nonprofits, in any institution. And I think now is a moment we live in where creators are able to ally with everyday citizens to be able to drive real change. And so that's, I'm a creator by background. That's what led me to run for US president. Donald Trump, Elon Musk, very similar backgrounds as creators who are allied with the everyday citizen to overthrow, in some sense, the managerial class that has a lot of our modern culture and certainly our modern government in a chokehold. And so that's what motivated me to run in the first place. I think it's a common thread that you could connect for some of the other characters you just mentioned. And, for my part, look,
America's healthcare system is lacking in any real care. Insurance companies regularly deny progressive treatment options, primary care physicians refuse to order comprehensive lab work, and the standards of care lag years behind the leading research. That's where Merrick Health comes in. Merrick Health represents a paradigm shift in how we approach medicine. The premier health optimization platform, Merrick Health empowers you to maximize your longevity and performance with the confidence that comes from having experts in your back pocket. They offer cutting-edge diagnostic labs, concierge health coaching, and expert clinical oversight. They help you achieve your health and fitness goals by leveraging data-driven lifestyle and nutrition recommendations, along with supplement and prescription treatment options. If you're listening to this show, then you're probably a proponent of taking your health into your own hands. That's why we've teamed up with Merrick Health to offer a turnkey optimization package designed for those who want to maximize their performance and longevity with the most elaborate testing on the market. You'll receive extensive lab work, thorough lab reports, video calls with Merrick's health experts, and expedited onboarding. Go to merrickhealth.com/Peterson and use code Peterson to get the same panel and medical oversight I get and save 10% at checkout. That's merrickhealth.com/Peterson and use code Peterson at checkout.
For my part, look, I've enjoyed my presidential run immensely. I was the experience of a lifetime. I grew in ways that I would not have but for doing that one thing. I do believe in for all the things that I could blame for why I didn't achieve the ultimate goal. I'm grateful that as somebody who was relatively unknown at the start of it, I beat multiple former and current senators and governors and a former vice president along the way. And so I'm satisfied with how we did. But at the same time, I didn't achieve the goal of assuming the presidency. And I tell my kids the same thing, so I'll follow the advice myself. The number one factor that is most determinative of what you achieve in life is you. It's not the only factor that matters, but it's the number one factor. And there are some things that I think I could have done better. I think a lot of my former colleagues, people I've worked with, employees of mine, close friends, family members, I think one of the things that they were most frustrated by, and they tell me this, and I appreciate that, is that they're frustrated that they feel like the public did not get to see the full me that they know, right? I think that part of what happened in the process of running for president, and it was unavoidable this time around, and I don't say I have any regrets considering the result that I achieved, but if I was to still take some reflections and learning from it, I took the approach that if you hit me, I'm going to hit you back 10 times harder. I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. That was just my approach. And because I had been in a position where in the world of business, it doesn't happen to you in quite the same way. But when I started to become ascendant, it was a level of attack, right? A deeply personal attack on me from 10 different angles. That was the way I dealt with it, was to say, well, I will one by one hit you back 10 times harder, and that's how I'm going to do this. And that is part of me. I'm a fighter, I'm a competitor, but it's not all of me. And I think that one of the challenges, but if you're going to lead the free world, you better be up for that challenge at the highest level, is to show the people that you are a fighter, but while also finding ways to really allow 300 million people who don't otherwise know you to really get to know what's in your heart beyond just your ability to fight. And that is, I think, where I left some room on the table over the campaign that I think is, probably one of my great learnings.